Good morning, you guys. I was just doing some research on what the Bible says about quarantining the sick, and in reference to the times we're living in today where we have this mandated self-quarantining going on in America especially and around the world. And I just want to start off by saying I am in no way advising any medical advice. I'm not a medical professional, and I'm just showing what the Bible says about quarantining. So I'm not saying anybody has to follow any of this advice or anything. I'm just saying this is what the Bible says. So in Leviticus is where most of the references I found are to what to do with sickness and sick people. And I'll just read a verse right here in Leviticus chapter 13. Leviticus is the third book in the Bible. You got Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus. So Leviticus 13, verse 2 through 6. I'll just read part of it here. When a person has a swelling scab, a spot, or a skin on the skin of his body, and it becomes a disease on the skin of his body, he is to be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons the priests. And then further down here, so it talks about examining the unclean skin disease, and they called it leprosy in the King James Version. And it says here, and the priest will re-examine him on the seventh day. If the infection remains unchanged in his sight and has not spread on the skin, the priest must quarantine him for another 7 days. The priest will then re-examine him again on the seventh day after another 7 days and see if the infection has faded and has not spread on the skin, and then he will pronounce him clean. So this theme over and over again in the Bible is a 7-day quarantine for a lot of sicknesses, and a lot of other sicknesses only 1 day. And the references I have is Leviticus 13. You can read the entire chapter. Leviticus 13 verses 2 through 6, Leviticus 13, 31 to 33, Leviticus 13 verse 46, Leviticus 14 verse 8. I'll just read that one really quick. The one who is to be cleansed must wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and bathe in water, and he is to be clean. Afterwards, he may enter the camp and remain outside of his tent for 7 days. And Numbers 31:19 and 2 Kings 15 verse 5 refers to a king who had leprosy, and he had to remain in a separate house from everyone else for the rest of his life. And Luke 17:12, which is a verse that talks about where Jesus encountered some lepers and they stood afar off, and because they were unclean. And so yeah, the Bible doesn't refer anywhere to having the healthy people quarantine themselves. Only the unhealthy or the people that have this sickness, they are to quarantine. There's nowhere where it says to quarantine the healthy. So this law that we have today where everyone has to quarantine themselves is kind of ridiculous. Sweden has used much more common sense. Those who are sick, stay at home. They're following more of the biblical example, which is kind of funny because Sweden considers itself to be more of an atheist country today, but they're using more common sense than America, which America tries to call itself a Christian nation, but they're not really following the biblical counsel at all. This quarantine is that we have in our country right now is unbiblical, and it's unethical, and it's zero common sense. Those who are sick are to be quarantined, not those who are healthy. Those who are healthy should be able to go out and work and live life and interact and trade. So I mean, it just shows that there's, common sense is everywhere. It's even in the Bible. Of course it's in the Bible. And so I would just counsel anybody to go ahead and check it out. Check out these verses. All of Leviticus 13 and Leviticus 14, Numbers 31:19, 2 Kings 15:5, Luke 17:12. These are all references to the sick and those who are quarantined. And I just want to thank you for listening to this. And I'm just trying to help people out with some common sense. And I hope you have a great day. God bless.